Just get an Android. That's all I'm using right now is my Android. Oh my god.
Like I said, I have no idea if it's because I'm the host, and so if someone with a Wi-Fi connection that's not great joins, it
Mhm.
affects it. But it did because you and I were very clear until our guest joined. So we'll see if that happens again. And for
Okay.
anyone who is tuning in to this episode now after that last one, apologies. Hopefully, I will figure this out soon. It's a learning curve going from live stream to
Mhm.
completely different platform.
And even then, the live stream would like be funky too
Oh
because like it'd be blurry, or someone would do like just pause on the screen, like it happened in our first.
yeah, right.
Just happened.
But at least with this format, I can go back in and edit that out or keep some things in.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you feeling since our last episode? It seemed like you had some epiphanies and
Hmm.
some feels after we talked to Deanna.
Yeah. Well, also too, like whenever we were first posing questions and what you wrote, and I was like actually looking at it, I was like, oh, we're gonna get in depth with this, even though it's like very lighthearted. Because, and I mentioned this, I don't talk about my undiagnosis of ADHD because it's also like I can't even, I mean, I can say I'm undiagnosed and that's being honest compared to like, oh, I have ADHD. It's like, it's not confirmed yet. So it's like the whole idea of I'm just getting ideas from my friends or like the internet. And so it's just kind of like I'm Google doctoring myself,
Right.
or like how we had discussed, it was like imposter syndrome. Like, no, I don't actually have this. I'm just crazy. I'm just out of my mind and I should be, yeah, anyway. Um, but then it was just also talking it out and like hearing what Deanna goes through every day as a diagnosed person with ADHD, and they're like, there were so many similarities, and I just felt like that I'm not alone in this, and I'm sure people who are watching this now are probably thinking the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, I do that too. I can identify with somebody who feels the same things the way I do. So yeah, definitely very eye opening and overwhelming to say the least, but like a good overwhelming feeling to know that no one's alone in this.
Exactly. That is pretty much, I mean, I said this in the last episode. That was
Mhm.
pretty much my intention with these
Mhm.
type of discussions
Mhm.
is to potentially help people understand that they're not the only ones going through this, and
Mhm.
not to make any comparisons to anybody else, but just to know, listen, there's other people that are struggling with this. Some people are seeking a diagnosis. Some people are still, trying to figure out what's going on with them. Some people are diagnosed and trying to figure out what's going
Mhm.
on with them.
Mhm.
And that's why I think it's been nice having you along on this journey, because you're still like, all right, I guess I need to figure this shit out, man.
Mhm.
And so having these discussions with other people, I think is definitely cathartic for me, and I can see now that it's a positive experience for you too.
Mhm.
Which is why I'm really excited that we're again going to be speaking to a mutual friend,
Mhm.
Bethy. She also goes by Beth.
Mhm.
She is just such a sweetheart, the epitome of a Georgia peach. She's 29 years old.
Mhm.
Her current hobbies and interests are the band, Ghost cosplay, horror, horror
Mhm.
cosplay, writing, and rock hunting, which I'd like to get into. That's really cute. And her
Yeah.
previous interests, Star Wars
Mhm.
cosplay, the
Mhm.
Beatles, yes, the
Mhm.
Doors, and Toy Story, which is extremely cute.
I know. I want to unpack all of
Yeah.
that a little bit too, because I did not know about Toy Story until I read
Yeah.
these notes, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I know she loves Disney, but I want to know why Toy Story in particular.
Right, yes, and Another interesting topic or information about her is that she was diagnosed pretty young too in 2001.
Yeah.
She's only 29 years old. So I would love to dive into, what obviously I think it was her parents that probably prompted her to get tested for ADHD. But yeah, I would love to hear her journey through all of that. And she has so many interests as
Yeah.
well. And a lot of them are similar. Like I feel like the band Ghost and then like horror and like horror cosplays, those are pretty synonymous. But
Right.
it's interesting throwing in rock hunting into that. So it's just
I
so
had
cute.
to, yeah, I had to like double take on that because I thought I read it as like rock climbing or something like that. And then I looked, I'm like, hunting. I'm like, do they go out into the woods and like hunt for rocks?
I just kind of imagine like the first image that came up was like little truffle pigs just being like
Oh, yes, yes. Mm-hmm. But for rocks.
"Wow." Honestly, when I looked at that line item, all I saw was hunting, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that about
Yeah.
health." And then of course, I always read everything backwards. That's just how I
Mm-hmm.
roll. Probably an ADHD habit. And then I went and looked up, like, oh, rock hunting. All right,
Yeah.
we'll get into that soon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we are pretty much ready to rock and roll on this episode of Clergy Talk when we're doing kind of like a Neurospices uh, series. It sounds like you were diagnosed pretty early in life. And I'm interested to know what got you set in that direction. Was it your parents? Was it something where you brought it up and said, I'm having trouble in school? Can you walk me through that whole process?
So this is like 2001, and
Mm.
I was in first grade, and I literally almost failed first grade because I couldn't concentrate. I wanted to talk to everybody, and I guess my teachers complained about it. They just thought I was a bad kid, that I had behavioral issues, and my doctor was a saving grace, and my mom was a saving grace because at that time, you know, kids weren't really being diagnosed, and it was just overlooked. But they were like, "We're going to get you tested. We want to know what's going on." And so I was lucky enough to be diagnosed early so that my education could be taken care of too, rather than just being told I was a bad kid by my teachers. So they did, I guess, testing through my doctor. I can't remember like any psychological testing very well. I remember I was bounced around on different medications until we found what worked for me. I didn't fail first grade, um, thankfully. I still remember that teacher, though. That is something that will stick with me the rest of my life. I can tell you where her classroom is and everything. But I did deal with being told that I had behavioral issues rather than what was actually going on throughout elementary school, especially. So that's kind of, my mom was a big support and my doctor was a big support, but that's pretty much how that all started.
It's interesting that you brought up being, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but more or less traumatized by that teacher and always remembering that.
Yeah.
I have actually two similar stories really quick. When I was pretty young, probably in fifth grade, there was a teacher that said that I was very disruptive and that I had a mean streak, and that I just basically said I wouldn't shut up in class. And it's like, come on, man. And so I will always remember that teacher. I will always remember the one, I think I was in seventh or eighth grade math, and I would get lost so often, and later found out I have something called dyscalculia, but I would get lost so often and ask questions. And one day he said, "You ask the stupidest questions. Put your hand down." Yeah, and
Oh.
so this really sits with us when
Mm-hmm.
we're younger and in our formative years, and teachers do this to us, like adults that we're supposed to trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. It's really tough. Thank you for sharing that with us.
So I know you're a big nerd like the both of us, which is amazing, and that's why one of the reasons why we love you. But how do you typically get hooked into a hobby or interest? Because we did notice on your list that you sent us. Obviously, we know you're into ghosts. We know you're into horror. Rock hunting? Can you like tie your answer into your answer with that? Because we were just like looking at that. We were like, what is rock hunting?
How do you get hooked on your hobbies?
Yeah.
Specifically rock hunting, please.
Yeah.
So hobbies in general, if I get hooked on it, it's through someone else usually. And specifically with rock hunting. So I'm from Kentucky, but I flop between two states. But I have family in Kentucky, and there's bodies of water, like creeks and stuff. And a friend of a family member was like, "Hey, I like to go hunt rocks." And I'm like, "Okay, let's go hunt rocks." So we just started looking for like really odd rocks, geodes, and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I realized one day, I was like, "Oh my gosh, my brain turns off when I do this. I don't have to
Mhm.
think. There's no sound,
Yeah.
there's nothing."
Mhm.
And it is the best feeling in the world for somebody with ADHD or somebody who's neurodivergent. Our brains never shut off. There's always noise, there's always a thought. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, I haven't thought about something at least within the last few seconds. This is nice. And
Mhm.
so I like to go hunt rocks and creeks. So yeah.
That is so stinking cute. That is the first time
Mhm.
I've seen someone list that as a hobby. So thank you for explaining
Mhm.
that. And it makes so much sense. We actually just
Mhm.
had another discussion with a friend of ours about ADHD, and
Mhm.
she said the same thing. It's one of few, like when she's hyperfixating on something, like on a task at hand that she's very interested in, it's one of very few times where her brain just like hones in. Everything's very, very crystal clear.
Mhm.
With that being said, have you had any difficulties in maintaining your interests? Because I see that you have a lot, and I do as well. So does Veronica. I feel like most people with ADHD have a crap ton of interests. So there must have been times when it's been difficult to maintain one over the other. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit of that to us.
So I know that you both saw that I was into Star Wars, and
Hmm.
Mhm.
I was extremely into it like 4 years ago. When I say into it, I have so many Princess Leia costumes, it's ridiculous.
Mhm.
And
Slay.
so once
Always. Best
Leia.
Princess Leia.
once I like watched a movie or talked to someone, I dove into it so hard, and I got involved in costuming organizations and stuff like that. But for that, I just sadly couldn't maintain. Like I still love Leia. I
Mhm.
still wear those
Mhm.
costumes to conventions sometimes, but
Mhm.
the passion that I have for that, not to get on Ghost, but will not compare to the passion I have for Ghost.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I couldn't maintain Star Wars the way I can maintain Ghosts. There's still ebbs and flows. Like, there are moments where I'm like, okay, this is it. I don't have it anymore. And then it's like, oh, here's this thing that popped up that happened, or this is getting
Right.
ready to happen. And it's like, oh, okay, I feel it again. But there is, a moment I feel like for all of us that we're like, oh, wait, do we feel this way about this anymore? And then you're like, I have to remind myself why I got into this. And even though I couldn't do that with Star Wars, I've been able to maintain that with Ghosts and the horror community and things
Mhm.
like that, and rock hunting. So I don't know if that answers the question very well, but there are certain things I've been able to maintain, and there are other things that I haven't, like the Beatles and the Doors. It's something that
Mhm.
I hyper fixated into so hard that I think I loved it too much, and
Mhm.
it just, yeah, kind of fell apart. So I'm
Yeah.
chaotic. I'm sorry if it doesn't make any sense.
No, that makes perfect
No.
sense.
Yeah. It definitely makes a lot of sense. Well, okay, so with that being said, because I know we've discussed your Star Wars cosplays too and why it also kind of dipped out of it a little bit. Um, and now that you have Ghost, you obviously have a great community of friends and cosplayers here that look out for you. Do you feel like that's one of the ways you overcome like challenges in losing hobby interests?
Like having a community.
Yeah, like having people that are have your back and support you and love you for who you are.
Yes. It definitely makes me feel way less alone. Like, I feel like people in the ghost community feel really comfortable talking about how they feel or the challenges that they face. And you're like, oh, wait, I'm not the only person that might do this, that, I might feel like I'm odd for doing it, but I'm like, maybe I'm not, maybe I do know a few people that do A, B, or C. So it does make you feel more empowered. It does make you feel less alone for sure. I mean, being able to talk about it with both of you and nobody's looking at me like I'm crazy,
No,
because it makes you feel that way when you feel alone, and
Yeah.
it, I not to talk too much about ghosts, but
it's okay.
whenever I had a meet and greet with Papa specifically in Asheville, it was like, what, 2 years ago maybe, and I was like, essentially, I sometimes feel like I'm left out, or like I'm the oddball out. And he's like, you're not alone. He's like, I promise. Like, do you trust me? Like, you're not alone. And I'm just like, okay. So it just, in the community, you're just not. And you just feel that way. I mean, I hope everyone does. So,
It's interesting that you say that because something that I've noticed with people who are who have ADHD is there is a comorbidity of depression and anxiety with that, and it runs rampant in people who have ADHD. And one of the reasons that I understand is because ADHD, it's very simply put, is having issues with the neurotransmitters in your brain. And so that's 100% going to cause other issues like anxiety, panic disorder, depression. And with that being said, I'm wondering if you feel like your interests and hobbies, especially ones that you're able to hyperfixate on because there's so many elements to it, like Ghost, for instance, Star Wars as well. If you feel like they've helped you cope with anxiety and depression, and in what ways? Because you already said your Papa meet and greet, has been very soothing to you. Are there any other ways that you could share with us?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it ties in. Unfortunately, sometimes when you have ADHD, there are things you do hyperfixate on that you don't want to hyperfixate on,
Yes.
and you can't help it because you also, well, at least for me, I have anxiety. I was diagnosed with OCD early
Mhm.
on. So you sometimes hyperfixate on things that you don't want to, or
Yes.
things impact you way more intensely than they do other people. Not to, you know, say that anyone else being affected by something isn't, you know,
I got you
I
there.
probably didn't say that quite right, but I have extreme religious trauma, and I've talked with Veronica about this. We've talked quite a bit. So having ADHD and being a nervous kid and a depressed kid, I ended up watching this movie, and it will stick with me the rest of my life. It's called Left Behind. There is a series, and it's very awful. But that gave me religious trauma along with being raised the way I was. And Ghost was just like, okay, we're going to fix you. We're going to fix all of these things that hurt you. And so I just dove in, and, it has been helpful to ADHD. It's been helpful to depression, and it's also been helpful for me with my trauma. So, yes, like, to round back to everything, it
Mhm.
definitely, I am like off track. My brain just like,
No, you're not. You're not. You're
yeah.
fine.
You're fine.
And if you were,
It,
this is the place to do it.
okay. But rounding all that together, it does help my ADHD, and it also helps mental health issues and trauma and all of it. So, because I'm telling you, my brain just like short circuited. I was just like, wait a second, where am I going with this?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Uh, that is the thing with ADHD, and this is what we were talking about in our last episode as well. Is that the term is completely irrelevant in
Mhm.
comparison to what ADHD actually is. We don't
Mhm.
have a deficit of attention. As a matter of fact, sometimes we have way too much going to, like what you said, the wrong thing, or something in the moment that we don't really need to be paying attention to because there's like something else, or we have so much going out, and we're hyper aware of everything, and then that becomes completely overstimulating. And that can get in the way of our interests and hobbies too. For instance, you go to a lot of conventions, you go to a lot of like horror, like get-togethers and things like that. And I'm wondering if you've ever been overstimulated in that environment, and it's, kind of like thrown a cog in the experience for you. And if so, is there something that you do to pull yourself out of being overstimulated?
So, I actually do get extremely overstimulated at these conventions. By the end of the day, I'm usually good after I put my costume on.
Yeah.
Like if I have to do makeup, it is
Yeah.
literally meltdown city, and
Yep.
I can't help it. I'm very embarrassed by it. I don't know how to fix that. I've been dealing with that for a while, even though Papa One's easy to do because you mess it up and like it's right. But
Yeah, you just go,
yeah. But once I get in the costume and I'm in it for a little while, when we get to dinner after that, I completely disassociate. Like I'm with people
Yeah.
I love and I'm enjoying their company, but it's
Mhm.
just like I'm here, but I'm not here. And
Right.
I just have to like take myself to that place
Yeah.
that it just kind of saves your mental and emotional energy or helps you replenish. So I don't know that I handle it very well, but I just kind of get quiet and just listen to everybody else and sit back. And by Sunday, I can barely get in a costume because it's just I've done too much on Saturday
right?
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Well,
yeah.
it's also I don't know if you feel this way too, Bethany. It's like kind of like almost conserving your energy in a way because we have to disassociate so much. Um, but yeah, I can definitely agree to that.
So
Speaking of disassociating,
Mhm.
that's actually a topic that we have not really touched on
Mhm.
in on the previous episode. I'm wondering what Bethy disassociating means for you, because for some people it's completely involuntary. For some people it's something that they need to do as a coping mechanism. And speaking of cons, because we're already on that subject and it's so fucking overstimulating sometimes being at those. So to round back again, I'm wondering what disassociating means for you, and do you experience it in different ways?
so actually more so, and it makes me sad to say this, but every ghost concert I go to, I disassociate completely.
Mhm.
And so I don't get to remember a lot of things because it is involuntary. It just happens. I'm standing there in the pit and I'm like, do I even know what's going on? And you feel like you're outside of your body and like you feel like everyone's looking at you, but no one realizes what you're doing, if that makes sense. And it's just like you have to, it's hard to explain because I know it's different for everybody, but it's like you just remove yourself from yourself, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And I don't get to enjoy concerts the way everybody else does. And it makes me think, is something wrong with me? Like, do other people do this? Because it's so overwhelming because you're in a costume most of the time.
Right.
You've been standing there all day prior to that, talking to people and taking pictures. And then you finally get there and your brain's just shot. Like, you just are overwhelmed. And it's like, I'm here, but I'm already tired. Like, I want to go home and you
Mhm.
haven't even gotten started yet. So that's
Mhm.
kind of what happens. And I've noticed every single concert I've been to, it has happened every single time. So as much as I've enjoyed every ritual I've gone to, I don't remember a lot of things because I just completely pretty much black out and I'm standing there looking at everything. So that's kind of what happens for me. And it's self-preservation because I have to. If I don't, I mean, I think I would probably lose my mind. It's kind of, it's, I know it sounds ridiculous, but
No.
it's the way I have to preserve. Like, I love being around the people I love. I love being able to see you both whenever I get to come to LA. But it's just there are a lot of things I don't get to remember. It's the only way I can preserve and still be able to do the things I want to do. Because you are right. You do hype it up so hard, and this is gonna be the best day ever. This is gonna be the best costume ever. You know, I'm gonna get to do this or that or the other, and then you're standing there, a couple people back, and you're just like, what am I even doing right now? When is this going to be over? So, yeah.
I can relate with that, and maybe while I'm sharing this little story, Veronica can think of something to share as well, because I know she's got a lot of ritual stories. I many years ago decided that I was going to be the funniest person ever, and I was going to dress up like Tobias Forge from his iHeartRadio interview, specifically the one with the big round glasses. He's not wearing a hat, and I'm like, I'm going to buy a meet and greet, and I'm going to go meet Papa dressed like Tobias Forge from this because I thought I was so fucking funny. And I'm like, this is going to be great. I'll make him laugh. No one's going to do this. Ha ha ha. All right. And, and then of course, all my friends are like, you have to do it, So I show up. I'm in line waiting for, the meet and greet, whatever. And this horrible sense of dread and anxiety and panic just washes over me. And I'm like, I have to get out of here. I was like, I have to go. I don't want to be like a part of this. What was I thinking? I need to go. And when I say I thought I was going to be the funniest person ever, I'm being sarcastic. I was just like totally being a dork. But anyway, so I was panicking and I was like, I need to get the F out of here. And it was like a fight or flight thing that came up. I don't know what happened, but anyway, so I go in to meet him. I barely remember anything. I remember holding his hands like this and talking to him for a very short amount of time. And he hugged me. We did a couple different poses and then he was like, all right, bye-bye, and so apparently I'm like, ooh, deuces. Like I like ran out of there. And so I was like, eat, like I ran out. I don't remember him saying this to me. My friend said that she heard him say, you look great, and I was just like, like, but it's these situations that should be so enjoyable and memorable and fun. And there's just no recollection of it because your brain goes into that fight or flight overstimulation of just disassociating from it. And it sucks. And I don't think a lot of people, who, okay, well, most people who are either not on the spectrum or, don't have ADHD, they don't understand that, that when they see us like, what? Like, or we don't mean to do that. Something's overstimulating us or causing us just to be like, yeah. Veronica, you must have like a couple stories from rituals or maybe like our phantasm events or something where you've just
like I glazed. Yeah. It definitely happened at the second night of the Kia Forum ritual. And like it's not like I haven't been in the pit before. I was in the pit during the Tampa concert, but I was on rail. So it helped me a little bit to like be able to like hold on to something while watching the concert and kind of just like grounding myself and being able to center myself. And just also like not having anything really in front of me and being able to see Papa and like breathe and have a chance to like try and breathe. But during the Kia Forum, I was probably like 3 rows of people back from the barrier. And like we thought we were gonna get barrier like just in general, but it didn't happen, which is fine. But it like got to a point where I think because of just everybody was so hyped up for this show, it was like the last Kia Forum show. And sorry, I'm gonna just get myself comfortable here. I I just felt like the world was like caving in around me. And I was also like very anxious. You guys know I'm an anxious person. Like everyone was like, "Oh, Papa's gonna be unalived at this concert. Something's gonna happen, this, that, the other thing." So it's like a lot of my worries were still in place, even though I had seen the concert from the previous night and like nothing happened, obviously. Um, but it was just like all of those anxious thoughts and the anxiety, and then just like people, like it just feels like you're getting pushed forward like with the crowd. So it was kind of like, and like you said, Bethany, like you're there all day. you're in a costume, you're seeing people and talking with them, and you're hyping yourself up, and then it's like you get in there, and I mean, thankfully I had I thankfully I had someone with me to like be able to brace onto myself, and we held hands, so that grounded me a little bit. But I like only remember certain things from the end of that concert too, because I was just like so out of it. So you've talked about like being overstimulated or disassociating, but there's definitely probably moments of times where you feel calm or happiness when you're interacting with your hobbies and interests. So can you elaborate on when you're enjoying your hobbies and interests, how it makes you feel, Bethy?
Oh, that's a loaded question and a loaded answer
Do
in a
it.
good
Do
way.
it.
Yeah, go for it.
So with ADHD, you I don't know if you both feel this way, but at least for me, I don't feel very confident in my abilities, and I always second guess myself constantly. And with certain things, especially recently, the Evil Dead box that looked like a basement that we did, I have not been sure of myself very much. I was sure. I was like, this is going to be awesome. And I know that it's going to be awesome. So it was a bit euphoric to feel sure about myself. And I knew that the Raimi brothers were going to love it. And they did. And I have a problem though of thinking that I'm feeling cocky rather than just sure of myself. So I don't trust my own emotions. And I feel like a lot of us go through life, especially for me, being diagnosed young, um, where you don't feel good enough for people around you. Like you constantly are worried that your best work is not your best work. And it just makes you second guess. So when you on the negative, you end up feeling like you're being overly confident, but then really in reality, you did something that was awesome and you know that you did something that was awesome and it just makes you feel good. So my box was my win recently. And I know that sounds crazy if people don't know what I'm talking about, but that was my win. So it's those things, or like writing a chapter that I am so proud of and that I love, even though I don't show anybody those chapters. Veronica knows a lot about that, but coming up with those ideas, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel sure of myself, even if it's privately or just with a couple of friends. So my hobbies allow me to feel important, and they allow me to find a place where I can feel good about what I'm doing and not have to worry about what I'm doing. So there's that.
That was epic. There, there are coping mechanisms that we have to come up with, especially if we're hyper aware of our neurodivergence. And one of the ways that I have coped with the feelings of inadequacy and the imposter syndrome, which is rampant in people with ADHD, is this is probably extremely toxic, but I gaslight myself all the time, constantly. I sometimes this still happens, but I will have an interaction or something where all of a sudden the world falls in on me. It's how it feels. The world just collapses on me. Everyone hates me. I can't do anything right. What am I even doing here? And it's soul crushing. And I have learned over 40 years that sometimes you just have to gaslight yourself and go, well, what if they don't feel that way about you? What if people don't hate you? Maybe you are just being a little, I'm sorry to use this term, but maybe just being a little crazy. Like maybe you should rethink that. And so it's something that Veronica and I have discussed as well, where I'm like, bitch, sometimes you just gotta gaslight yourself to get through your day. So, so Bethy, I'm wondering, do you have any insight or advice like that for someone that might be struggling with their ADHD symptoms?
Well, I'm still learning. Um, I'm actually getting ready to enter therapy because I went through a really long stint of not wanting to be medicated, not wanting to go to therapy, all of that. So I don't
Understandable.
have a lot of, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to get to that
Mhm.
point. There's a lot of stigma, unfortunately, still. So um, I am still learning, to be honest.
We all
When
are.
I get my and when you have a win, you take that win and you like choke the life out of it pretty much. I mean, I know that it's very aggressive, but that's the only
Wait.
way that I really know how to do things.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and this could just be me, but there is no in between. It is one extreme or the other extreme.
Mhm.
There is no, maybe it's okay. It's either going to be really horrible or really great. And on the opposite of being positive, of gaslighting yourself in a positive way, you can
Mhm.
also do it in a negative way. And
True.
I'm trying to surround myself with positive people, like with the box, not to bring that up again, but I had somebody
Talk
put to
about
me,
your
they're like,
box.
my box, you know,
Talk about your
like my
box.
box. But I had a friend that we were working with, and I was just convinced that we were not going to get into the convention because how random is it to bring a huge box into a convention and somebody's sitting inside it?
Yeah.
So they're like, we're getting in. I don't care if we have to go through a different door. We're going in there. You're going to do this. You have no other choice but to get in this box and go through a convention. I know it sounds silly, but
Just
I'm
like
trying to surround myself.
pull you in through the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Just like drops
at that
in.
point, I would have taken it apart and put it back on and like put it back together if that's what we had to do.
Mhm.
But I'm trying to surround myself with positive people. I'm trying to work with my partner more. We work actually a lot very closely together on my writing and like what happens with who and what their story is. I mean, he's very much a sounding board, um, but that helps me to stay on track if I'm struggling with my hobbies. Um, but other than that, I mean, I have like basic things that I do that have nothing to do with hobbies, but for ADHD,
Mhm.
um, it might be silly, but I hate doing the dishes.
Mm.
And so I will do the one thing I hate the most in the dishes and then do the ones that I don't mind. 'Cause
Yeah.
there was this ADHD content creator that popped up on one of my social medias, and they were talking about how they do things one room at a time.
Mhm.
And it really makes sense because I can literally do 5 things at once pretty much. And the problem is those things don't get done at 100%. Like
Yeah.
you're getting like 20% of different, you know. So I try my best. I'm not great at it, but I try my best to focus on one room or one thing at least.
Mhm.
So that's something. But when it comes to writing, it's chaos. So still honing in on that. But that's pretty much until I get proper therapy, those are the best things that I can do for myself that's helping a bit. So and also, um, because we were talking about, um, feeling rage about things that are bothering you, like, I have an issue with if I have a plan and things do not go to that plan. Say I'm going to a restaurant and they don't have that one specific thing that I knew I was going to get, I will
Mhm.
panic. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
full on, I want to leave the restaurant, I want to cry, like, and I know it to other people, they're like, what, you know, what's the deal? But this is the plan you had. And
Yeah.
how can you function if you don't have it? So I was
Mhm.
talking to my partner and they're like, you know, maybe think about coming up with 3 things that you might want on that
Yes.
menu. So if 1 doesn't work out and 2 doesn't work out, at least there's a 3rd one. Sometimes there isn't a 3rd one, but I have noticed that having that kind of helps. And maybe with cosplay, choosing 3 different costumes for
Mhm.
someone that might help. So because I do get overwhelmed with costume choices.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but those are a couple of, well, a few things. I know it's all over the place, but those are a few things that are helpful and I'm still working on. So
That is extremely enlightening. Like I was saying before, you are extremely self-aware, and I know that you're still working on it. We're always learning about ourselves as we face each new challenge and each new trigger, each new day. And I'm just extremely proud of you. And in particular, I'll probably like tear up a little bit. Proud of anyone who is actively trying to explore themselves. It's so hard to do. It is so hard to do. It can be extremely painful, and it's much easier to just turn that off and go, yeah, I'm just going to be everyone else's problem. you know. So
It is.
and yeah, and I'm not saying that anyone is someone's problem. I'm just saying, like, it's way easier to just do your thing and not think about how it's affecting you. So that's really cool that you're wanting to go back to therapy as well, just to feel better. I think a lot of us just want to feel better.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, having coping skills of any sort is going to make life a lot easier. I was talking to my mom actually about this podcast earlier, because she's involved in ghosts, she's involved in everything. It's like we're, right on track with each other. But we were just talking about my diagnosis as a kid, and brain just totally floated away.
That's what we do
not,
here.
It's not easy. I mean, it is nice to think about ADHD as a superpower because we do get to do things in a different way than other people, but it also is very much a struggle as well. It's not sunshine and rainbows. A lot of times it's very, at least for me, and I'm not saying it should be embarrassing for anyone else, but sometimes it's really embarrassing for me because there are things I just can't control. So therapy is, I'm excited about it. I'm scared, but I'm really excited because I do think coping mechanisms will help me a lot. Hopefully I'll be able to enjoy concerts next year or whenever. So we'll see. Not to ramble, but
you're not rambling at all. Do you have any other goals? I know that you would like to enjoy some concerts, but is there anything else that, you're going into therapy that you want to actively work on?
I definitely want to work on the rage because it's something that I'm so frustrated because I'm aware of it, and I know that I can probably get some skills to work through that. And I mean, I know that this will help the hobby that I want to start, but I do hope to work through the anxiety of second guessing myself because I'm actually getting ready to start a podcast as well. And yeah, I haven't really said a lot about it, but it's a horror podcast. So
Yes.
it's something I feel confident in, but at the same time, I'm like, what if I'm not good enough? What if I don't know enough? So I want to go into therapy, getting help for that. And I also want to be able to keep my mind focused and learn how to do that because I actually have a goal of writing a book. I've wanted to for years. So those are the two big things I want to have coping mechanisms so I can actually do that. So pretty much.
That's incredible. Just to go in that with a goal-oriented mind is going to be so helpful for you. Just regular talk therapy doesn't work for everyone. Just when you go in, you're like, then they go, tell me how your week went. Sorry, that doesn't work for me. And my brain's like 5 steps ahead of you, Mr. Therapist. I need to know how to fix this dilemma. I need some tools. I don't want to talk about my feelings because my feelings are way different than they were a couple days ago.
It's constantly evolving. Like honestly, no joke, the last therapist I had, she almost fell asleep on me. No joke. So that's why I was like, I'm laying off therapy for a little while, but I've found someone that I think might be my speed. So I'm not even kidding. She's sitting there drinking a caramel macchiato and it's like, I'm so sorry, I'm tired. And I'm like, I'm spilling these very intimate details to you, like, but not every therapist is that way. To anyone that listens, if this is included, not every therapist is that way. And there's someone out there for everyone if you're wanting to get therapy or find tools to work through things.
So much tea right there, by the way. So much tea.